Welcome to the 2020 Board of Equalization. Please silence your cell phones, pagers, and other electronic devices. We'll have a moment of silent reflection and pledge of allegiance after that.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First, we'll have a review and approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Drew, second by DeSanto. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Number 5, 2020 County Board of Equalization, exempt properties, omitted properties, stipulation, no change, appeals, and any other items required by statute. Shannon?
All right, good morning. Shannon Rittberger, Director of Equalization. So all we plan on doing this morning is the exempt properties. We have a day and a half scheduled next week for the assessment appeals. What I've got for you is to act on the applications for exemption from property tax. Just a quick summary of what happens. The law requires anyone that thinks they're exempt from property tax to make an application to my office by November 1st. We review those applications, make a recommendation to the board. Anybody that applies, they're included in a publication. So in the newspaper, the public can see everybody who is asking for an exemption from property tax. Then the applications come here to you at this meeting for you to approve or deny them. And that's what we're going to do. And we've got several lists. What we do in Pennington County is we break these applications up into different categories. One list you'll see says new exempts 2020. None of these have been approved or denied yet by you, but we separate them out so you can see what ones are brand new for this year. They haven't been exempt in the past. Now you look at most of those, though, you'll recognize them, like the Catholic Diocese. Well, the Catholic Church is an exempt entity, but that Diocese of Rapid City is the former credit union property that they bought. So the Catholic Church is an exempt entity, but this is the first time that property will be exempt. This just makes it so you can see what's brand new this year. Then partial exempts. These are properties that are not 100% exempt from property tax because they are using the property for some other use part of the time or something. Just so you can see those that are partial exempt. And then the other one is 100% exempt. Those properties have been exempt in the past, most of them for many years, and they are 100% exempt. All three of those lists come with a recommendation from my office to grant the exemption. And I would suggest that unless you have any questions, that you just act on all three of those.
Anybody have any questions?
Madam Chair, how do you determine the percent if it's going to be partial exempt? How do you determine if it's going to be 25 partial exempt or 50? I'm just curious, that's all.
So many years ago, there was a case that went to the Supreme Court because the law says the property has to be used entirely for the exempt purpose. But a church appealed the decision of the county on the use of a church camp property, and it went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court says that a property can be partially exempt based on its use. And the church camp, we all know, doesn't get used in the wintertime. And in the summertime, when they're done with church camp, that church was letting other entities use the property for whatever. And the court ruled that you split up the use by time. How many days is it church camp? How many days is it anything else? And the winter time, when it's not being used, is split at the same percentage. So one day here, and just add it up.
So it's based on time,
Yep,
time and
time.
use.
And there might be a couple of those properties where half of the time on half of the property. So maybe we take that into account. I think most of them are, it's just strictly time.
Okay, thank you.
So before we vote on this, do we have people in the audience that need to speak ahead of time?
Not on these, these all come with a recommendation from me to grant the exemption. Uh, The people waiting are the next things we'll do.
Move
Okay.
for approval.
Moved by DeSanto,
Second,
second by Roskinick.
we're doing all four categories, right?
3.
3.
3.
Three.
Yep. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, to be clear, these came with a recommendation to grant the exemption. The next two lists, I have a recommendation to deny. And I want to start with those that are late. You see exempts late. All of these properties have been exempt in the past, but the law requires that they make an application every year to my office with a deadline of November 1st. And every year, there's always some of them that are late, and we put those on a list here. Because the law requires an application by November 1st, I don't see how I can recommend granting the exemption when they didn't meet the requirements of the law. So we put them on a list like this, and I bring it to you. And here we've got some people in the audience that would like to step up and say something about it being late. I wanted to clarify a couple though, and then we'll go to those people. Love Inc. of the Black Hills and Naja Temple, they actually submitted an application online. We didn't get it because of a failure of the online process, so they actually aren't late. I talked to them yesterday. I've got a letter from Blood Systems Incorporated, Cancu Lutna Omni. I got a letter from them, and I'll give that to you if you want to read it. I had a phone call from Rushmore Lions, Wellspring, and I talked to Wheaton College yesterday. And then you've got some people in the audience that are the different organizations. Rushmore Hockey is here. You'd like to hear from
So-
each of them?
Just one question, Shannon. So can we approve even if they're late, or by law you cannot? As a Board of Commissioners, is there a rule that we can approve them even though they're late? Because you said didn't meet the requirements of the law.
The application did not come in by the deadline.
Okay.
So I'm going to leave that decision up to you.
That's what I'm saying. Can we make that decision and not be doing something by law that we can't?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Deuce.
question to Shannon. So the late ones all previously had been exempt though?
And I should add, and would otherwise qualify for the exemption.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have a motion on any of these, or do we want to hear from the audience first?
The audience wants to speak, that's fine, but I would make a motion to grant all the late exemptions.
Motion by Drews, second by LaCroy.
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Motion- One no, and the rest aye, so the motion carries. Did anybody want to still speak? Sir?
As long as have been approved, then
You're welcome. Sir?
Hi, ma'am. I'm Will Huffman. I'm the new post commander for VFW 1273. I just want to emphasize new.
Okay,
We had actually gotten a notice saying we had been approved. We had also submitted ours online, as he had said. So we got a notice saying we were approved, then just got an email the other day saying we weren't. And this was our first year filing for it because we had just found out this year that organizations like ours, American Legion, DAV, TREA, were already getting this and we weren't. So for years, we've been paying full property tax without knowing it was a benefit. So to be told we were approved and disapproved really kind of threw us off guard. And
you
with
are-
being shut, we're really facing a tough time right now.
You are approved right at this point.
I just wanted to say thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Have a good day. You're welcome.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner LaCroy.
Shannon, have we been having problems with those online?
The state created an online application this year for the first time. This year was the first time, and yeah, there was problems.
Okay.
That's why I pointed out a couple of them there, because we didn't get the application by the deadline. And when we notified them of this meeting, they provided a dated application that they applied. There were some problems with the online application.
Okay.
We didn't create it, but the state's process of getting those applications to us, there were some failures.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Roskinek.
Shannon, on the Black Hills Works Foundation, so every one of those line items, they probably get a separate form that they have to fill out if they
Yes.
want to.
Yep.
So they were all late?
Yeah, they don't get a form. There's an application for each of those tax parcels. And they were late. They've been late in the past. I think there is a problem of remembering who's supposed to do this every year.
Yeah, that seems a lot of
Out of
a
the-
lot of lates.
Yeah, let me say, okay, so there is a small church out there and they have to apply every year. And the church secretary dies, and the next person that gets stuck with that job has no idea, we gotta fill out this form every year. So a lot of times there's very good reason that the application is late. Some of these corporations, you would think that they would be more on top of it, but same thing happens. Whatever secretary has done this for 10 years has moved on to something else, and whoever gets a job doesn't know about this. The mailing address that we have goes to a corporate office and not the local office. There's always reasons for some of these late ones.
Well, next year it might not be so lenient on Black Hills Works. I think that there's enough of those that they shouldn't be late.
The reason we do this is to impress upon some seriousness of this.
Thank you.
Here's why I voted no. Because we hear it every year.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
Anybody else from the audience want to speak?
Did we miss anybody? Sir?
I didn't hear our organization called out, but it's Crescent Lodge in Wall, South Dakota, the Masonic.
Come up to the microphone, sir.
They just voted to approve the exemption on all of them, including yours?
Okay, I just didn't hear the thing called, but then, yeah, I'd like to say thank you. And
Well-
all mine, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I just had a senior moment, so.
You're good. Thank you,
Have a
sir.
good day.
You have a good day, sir. Sir? no,
Okay.
One more. Come on up, sir. Your name, sir?
My name is Brian Freoff. I'm the president of the Fraternal Order of Police here in Rapid City. Sorry I came in late. I thought it started at 9. The only thing I just want to make the commission aware of, our renter has moved out as of April 1st. So we completely occupy our building at 3050 Eglin right now. And he has vacated the premises, so we don't have a for-profit entity in our building anymore. So I'll let you guys know.
Oh, Shannon.
So that's one of them that's on the list for parcel exemption, because that's a property where it was being used in part. So next year, it'll be on the list for 100% exempt.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Is that, okay, all right, then there's one other list, and we're done with this. It's titled Exempts Denied. Okay, these are not denied because you have to act on these, but this is those that come with a recommendation from my office to deny the exemption, not because it's late, but because I don't think the property qualifies for the exemption. And I want to go down through these. There's only one where the property owner here is here to argue, and that is Black Hills Crisis Pregnancy Center, the second, third lines. So Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanity, that is a property that they aren't using, it's just vacant, they aren't doing anything with it, and when I talk to them, they acknowledge that it doesn't meet the criteria for an exemption. So they're not gonna come in and say anything. Yellow Bike Program, there's a guy east of town who gives bikes away to kids. Um, he's got a trailer house and a shop and a piece of land. His wife mistakenly applied on the house. She acknowledges that was a stupid mistake, doesn't intend the house to be exempt, so she's not going to argue. The Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, that all three of those properties are a church school that has since sold. The church conference office, I talked to them. They mailed in an exemption like they always do, not realizing that that's the property that they just sold. So they don't care. St. Isaac's, I don't even know how to say that. It's a
Jokes.
Catholic church.
Joe.
Okay. That is a property they also sold. I think it was something similar to that, just get used to filling out this form every year. Chapel Lane Village Homeowners Association. Again, a new guy with an officer of the Water Association filled out a form and on the wrong piece of property. He said, forget it, but because we'd already had an application, it's already published, you act on it here. The only other one, again, Black Hills Crisis Pregnancy Center, Mr. Laster is here to say something about that. That property, there's two lots on Haynes Avenue. They used to have houses on them. The property was donated to the Crisis Pregnancy Center several years ago. The houses and garages, all the buildings have been removed. This property was in front of the board last year for the exemption. I recommended denial on it last year because it's not being used. The law requires that the property be owned by an exempt entity and used for an exempt purpose, and it hasn't been used since they've owned it. They had plans to build on it, and last year at this meeting said that they would build on it, and it hasn't happened. In fact, right now it's listed for sale and has been for several months. So that's why I'm recommending denial of the exemption. Mr. Lassiter would like to say something.
Madam Chair, a question to Shannon first.
Commissioner Bruce.
So, but the Black Hills Crisis Pregnancy Center is an exempt organization itself?
Yes, they would qualify as a charity, I think. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Roskinek.
Last year, I think we just agreed that 50% was a percent last year.
I think it was a partial
Because
exemption.
they were waiting to get the funds to build. I just wanted to recall that that's how we did it last year.
I think that's right.
Okay.
Shannon, isn't there a rule you have to have, like our church, we had blank land, so we could not call it exempt until we started building on it, building the church, and as I recall, it was the First Wesleyan Church.
All of the exempt statutes, there's one for charities, one for churches, one for schools, that all of the exempt statutes are consistent with this requirement that it be owned by an exempt entity and used for the exempt purpose. For a charity, the statute starts with property owned by a public charity and used for charitable purpose is exempt from taxation. All of them say it has to be owned and used. So an organization, even though they're an exempt entity or could qualify for an exemption, has to actually use the property for the exemption. They can't have something they're holding, waiting to build a new church on. Churches that buy property and wait to build a church on pay taxes until they're using it, and you build a church on it, and then you've got a use.
Okay,
There are a lot of exempt entities that own property that they pay taxes on because it's not being used for their exempt purpose.
thank you. That's
Madam
what I
Chair.
need to qualify. Commissioner Roskinek.
Shannon, what's the assessed value on those, on that property?
Ms. Deb.
2,600.
Wow.
Is that with the houses? They're,
There's no structures on
It's
there.
We tore the houses
Just
down.
the lots?
just the lots are worth that?
Yeah.
So the taxes are about 2,200, 2,300, if it were
125,
assessed.
At
26,
the high end, probably, yeah.
126,
Yeah, that's probably a little bit high.
126.
136, I think, isn't it? Maybe not. No, I think you're right, 126.
Travis?
Ready for me now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Yes, correct. I was here last year, the 9th of April, and y'all were gracious enough to let us be at a tax rate of 50% on that property. Since then, this most recent tax evaluation of the property has gone up. Originally, it wasn't at this value. It only just recently changed when the county just revalued the properties here. So it used to be right around 56,000 total between the two properties. One was like 24 and one was 26 or something like that. I don't have last year's evaluation. So whenever the value went up, whenever we were, whenever the equalization raised the property value taxes, I came into the office originally, and that's how I found out that they were going to deny us as well. So that's what kind of prompted this. I was actually expecting to be on the 22nd of April, not today. And then I got an email for being here today as well. So I'm not as prepared as I'd like to be because I started preparing everything for this situation, but I'm kind of off the cuff today. But yes, we do recognize that there's nothing there, and yes, we did have a proposal to build. Now, what transpired from that meeting in April last year to now is we had a plan to build. As we were starting to work through that proposal, what ended up happening is we found out that the city was going to remove our access points on that piece of property and change them dramatically as opposed to what we had planned on that piece of property. And therefore, we kind of had to abandon that plan because they were going to remove our Anamosa access, and then they were going to move our Haynes access to the southern portion of the property along that property line. Well, the building that we had planned for was about a 3,500 square foot building that was going to run that whole western side of the property, of course, meeting all setbacks. But then anyway, the way it all worked out is it didn't work out that what we had planned was going to be able to fit there with the parking spaces and everything because we'd had to push the building down to the eastern side of the property line. And then to bring in a parking lot, we'd have to dig out more property, put a retaining wall. It was just looking like it was going to be a little crazy. So in the meantime, our plans for at least the preliminary build failed from our perspective. So raising money to do the rest of the build, right now, we were offered some money from another entity, not a nonprofit, and we could not take the sale of the property because we actually have a quit deed claim on that property, which basically says that we can't sell or anything to anybody unless that it is a Catholic, Christian, or other nonprofit organization to be used for charitable purposes. So even if we wanted to sell it, which it was suggested to us that maybe we consider selling it or even putting a for sale sign on it to see if we could gain some recognition that we're trying to do something with the property, that maybe another organization, a charitable organization would be interested in it and could either build there, operate their system there, or they could buy the piece of property and outright build on their own. So we haven't been able to move anything because of some of the restrictions from the city. And so I just wanted to put that forward so y'all didn't think that whenever I was here last time that we said we weren't planning on selling the property. That was not the initial plan of action when we were here. We were interested in building on it. We still would like to if we can move forward. But I also have to tell you, from when I took over this organization 2 years ago, we had $2,000 in the bank. And while we have grown over the last 2 years since I've been there, we only have about 20,000 in savings moving forward. And that's still not enough to start any kind of building project on something like this. But I just wanted to put those factors out there. I do expect that you'll probably deny it because I do understand what Shannon's talking about. I've done a lot more reading through the state SDCLs concerning the tax law. However, some of them very specifically state, yes, they all state that it needs to be used, but only one of them states that it needs to be used, and that means you have to have property or something operating on it, but it doesn't talk about this particular charitable organization. There's like 3 categories. Again, I apologize, I didn't have those here because I was working on my research for that, but I hope to bring more information to y'all on April 22nd, as I expect that y'all will deny it today. But do y'all have any questions for me? So maybe I can at least answer some of those.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Drews.
So Travis, what would your request, what's your request actually going to be?
Our request is that you would continue to give us a little bit of grace so we can figure out exactly what we're going to do. We were very appreciative of 50% last year. That would work great, except for when the value went up. Now that's just that much more that comes out of our pockets to pay the taxes on a piece of property. So,
So the
we
50% last year was based on what?
y'all based that on the fact that we had a plan of action to build and move forward on the property, even though y'all didn't need to do that. And I think Mr. Ross Connect made
I'm
that.
guessing about 1,100, 1,200 would be 50% of your tax burden.
Obligation? Okay.
So Shannon, what was it last year? Deb, what was the property worth last year?
Well, you gotta remember, it was 50% exempt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the totals have 50% out of them.
So the full value on this property would have been,
Okay. Okay.
on property right here.
Okay. And the second one?
Value on that. $12.9.
So about 63.4, or no, 53.4.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Ross Connect.
Travis, I appreciate you coming up and doing this. Last year, I was a little hesitant of the 50%, but you had the plan and you, at that time, if I remember right, the foundations were still in there. And so you actually got the work done to get the foundations out. So I was impressed that I felt I made a good decision because I felt you were moving forward with it because the foundations had sat there for quite a while.
Yes, they had.
They have. And I drive by this daily. That's my area of town. I was always surprised that you're going to try and build something on those lots just by looking at how they were set up.
The topography is not fun.
And I'm a little surprised that you're getting the access denied from the Haynes Avenue because that's an alleyway that comes in through, I believe that's an alley that goes all the way through, so.
That's the Anamosa. There's an
Anamosa.
Anamosa
Anamosa,
alley.
yeah.
But there was another access point right where that garage, in between the house and the garage, they're taking that access point
Yeah.
away.
But see, to me, I'm at this point to where I think we made a good decision last year, thinking that things are moving forward. And now that this has come to light, I think it would be unfair for us to do it for you and not as we just had these other holdings that people are holding these lands and paying the taxes on them. And plus, I was a little shocked with the price. I'm not into real estate sales, but the cost of the lots, my gosh,
They significantly went up.
well, you're trying to sell it for 135 too, so I think their appraisals comes up to, I come up with 125, so they're 10,000 under what you're trying to sell it for the assessment. But yeah, I I feel for you guys the way things come out, but I don't think it's fair for me to give you 100% when it's up for sale. I understand you have the stipulation on there that it has to be a nonprofit or
It can
faith-based
only, yep.
community only. I mean, right across the street, there's another church right there. So, I mean, they may be interested. I don't know, but I just have a tough time with that. But you did do the work. I'll give them credit for that. They got the foundations out and did some of it. I just wish you could have gotten the build.
Also, do we?
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner.
The way I look at it, this property was donated. The purpose of the donation was to help this charitable entity that uses all of their money for charitable purposes. Just in my mind, defined usage. If they're selling the property to raise money, and that money is wholly going to go towards the operation of this charitable organization, it is being used. It's being used to try and raise some money for that charitable organization. And even though it's not being built on now, it's still the use of that property, just my opinion, is to raise money for a charitable organization that I believe is fully tax exempt, isn't it, Shannon? The organization itself.
It would qualify for an exemption if it were using the property. And what you're referring to would open up a huge door for a lot of property to then go off the tax roll that is being held by exempt entities that have exactly the same intention of using the proceeds in the future.
Thank you. Just one thing. So the property went up from 153.4 last year, and that's without the exempt. Am I right, Deb? Okay, so it's 25.8 and 27.6 to 72.6 to 53.7, which is 126. So basically doubled the amount of that property. So we can adjust the amount of the property for tax purposes, meaning it was 120, it was 53.4, now it's 126. So that wouldn't open up anything. We usually change people's
I would like to
land
address that.
values. Go ahead,
We
Sharon.
have lots all the way down Haynes Avenue that are valued exactly the same as long as they're the same lots.
Right.
I would rather you grant them an exemption, even though they don't deserve it, than lower their assessment, because then all of the neighbors look on Rapid Map and see that these lots are assessed less than what theirs is.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner,
I propose that we do the 50% this year. That's a give-take on both sides.
I'll second that.
thank you.
Clarification, 50% of the,
The same,
same as last year?
50% exemption on the property.
Which would bring it back down to about 53, what it
Okay,
was last
so,
year.
so taking the $126,000 figure
Correct.
and cutting that in half.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same thing that we
And
did
now I
last
understand
year.
what you're doing.
So the only thing, and you're right, our church did not use ours, but we were using it for like different programs and things like that on it, but it still didn't count, Travis.
No, that's,
So, as much as I want to do this, we would start, a precedent, I believe, then at that point of, someone saying they're going to build in the same year to not doing anything, kind of like our church or any other that Shannon's saying. And at this point, I don't think that'd be right. As much as I'd like to do that for entities, because you want to save them money and they're nonprofits, churches or any other people in the community don't get that as well. So then we'd have to start doing, again, the 50% exempt for people. Like I said, if you know you're going to build something, and even though Shannon knew we were going to build a church, we had to break ground and actually start using that property for a church. So,
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Drews.
So Shannon, does the asking price of the property come into play at all when you go to give a price on that property, the valuation on that property?
Not so much. We assess at market value, not at asking price and not at sale price. We look at all of the sales in the area and we set a value that would represent what it would most likely sell for. They can ask whatever they want, and we know typically people ask high and they settle for less, but
So do you take into consideration when they've been told that the access to the property is going to be removed from?
we would, yes. Sometimes we know that about a property, sometimes we don't. I think the value that we have on it would still represent the property with the access he's talking about.
Can we see the other properties that are there and what they're assessed at? Is there any blank ones or empty ones on that block? No?
Not that I can think of.
It's being priced at $625 a square foot for office commercial. With that, to me, the ingress and egress of that is very poor. It's a really good location, but very poor ingress and egress.
Right.
So the $625 is probably reasonable.
So what's that make the two properties at then? The one with the 625 per square foot for both
Well,
properties?
if you take both properties and you take that times 21,550, you come up with 135,
Okay.
which is what they're asking.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner DeSanto.
I have an idea. Shannon can tell me if it'll work, but if they were to put some billboards on that property advertising Black Hills Pregnancy Care Center and what it does for the community, or would that be considered usage?
The law says used for the charitable purpose. That's all I've got to go with. And we're looking at an assessment date of last November 1st.
Well, but to save them from next year if we can't get this property sold.
And if you don't mind, one of the things we've thought about, I don't know how feasible it is, or if I even wanted to do this, but it's something that's come across. We actually have to pay for storage units. We thought about putting a unit out there so we could store all of our excess donations that come through. We'd have to secure it, of course. But the other thing we thought about doing is a donation box, because people do bring things to the center for our clients that they could donate into a donation box, kind of like the Salvation Army does. There's a few of those around town, but we could put some of those on there so people could donate anytime rather than whenever the center's open. Would that be considered use, at least in the eyes of the commission?
Madam Chair.
For next year, Travis.
For,
but
yeah,
not-
for next year. I get this as
Okay.
next year.
Okay.
I'm tracking.
Okay,
I wouldn't be in favor of that. It's a residential neighborhood and having people driving through the alley, and I think that would create, and that two accesses that you have from the old lot and the other one, I think you're shooting from the hip on that one. There's just too much residential down there to put a box in for people to drive around when wasn't set up that way. I know you guys are trying to look for possible ways, but I think that would create more problems for our ordinance people in the city.
yeah, it is office commercial, but, I
But
think
the
it's
lots are
mostly
just cleared. I
residential.
mean, nothing's
Yeah.
been set up.
Yep.
It'd be different if it was there, some work done as roadways for that type of stuff, but it's a bare lot. And if you put up a box like most people do, then you're having them drive through the alleys, and we're going to get concerns on, depending on when they decide to do their drop-offs and so.
So I'm going to
This is my thought.
make a substitute to deny. Is there a second?
Second.
I thought we had a
Discussion.
motion
Made a
for
sub,
50%.
and then I did a substitute to deny. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Drews.
they are scheduled to come back on the 22nd. Are you trying to take final action at this point in time?
Okay, let me clarify that. So the board acts on the exempt properties, and that we pick this day. The law requires that you meet on the first day that the Board of Equalization can meet, and we have done the exempt properties on that day, because then the law allows the property owner a week to come back and appear before the board and make an argument. The assumption is that the board acts on it, and he's not here, but he has the right to come back. Well, okay, so some property owners choose to be here on both days. He's already planned to come back, and we've got an appointment for him on the 22nd. So the law allows that. That's why we do this first, so we have enough time to give the property owner the opportunity to come back.
Is that your desire to come back then, Travis, or not?
Well, if it worked out in our favor today, great, but I'm scheduled to come back. So there's some more research that I'm doing in the process. So hopefully I'll be able to give a little bit more information whenever I conclude.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Drews.
I think under the circumstances whereby, they originally bought or received the properties with the intent of being able to remodel those two pieces of property for their use. And when they got into it and started trying to do the remodel and discovered how bad a condition the properties were, that's when the decision was made to remove the properties and try to move forward with building a new building. I would prefer to wait to take any action on it until Mr. Rossiter has provided us with further research on this.
I would like to add, the way the law reads is the board acts on it and they have an opportunity to come back and make an argument. So I would caution you on that. The Board of Equalization does not adjourn. You recess, and we will meet several more days. I worry about the technicality in not acting on it until that last date, and then maybe the law allows him another week to come back and you can't meet.
So if we deny, then he can come back on the 22nd is what Travis is saying, and then
I
he
think
might
that's
have a better,
cleaner for the
better
law.
argument, is what he's saying.
He still plans to come back and argue in front of the board. And he'd already scheduled that appointment, not thinking he could be here today. The reason we do the exempts today is quite a few years ago, we left them to the end and then had somebody that wanted to come back and there weren't enough days left. We sort of got stuck. So we do this at the beginning and we know there'll be an opportunity for him to come back.
Madam Chair, did you have a second on your denial?
Yes. Lloyd,
I
now
think,
we're having
I
discussion.
get what you're saying, Shannon, completely. So let's vote. Call for question.
Okay. Question been called. Is there a second? I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
See on the
Call
22nd.
No,
the
we haven't
question.
voted.
Yeah, that's
That was-
Oh,
voting on the
sorry.
question, calling the question.
Okay, motion is to deny. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Thank you
Four.
very much
Thank you, Shan.
for listening to me today, so I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Travis.
So,
As
So
much-
on the schedule that we've got for the next 2 days, the 22nd, he's got a time and he plans to be back. So
you.
you can take it up again.
And I'll just tell you, Travis, again, with our church, we were doing the same thing you were doing. We didn't get 50% off our land when we were doing it. We paid the full price, and it was a pretty big lot. And then we had to build something on it, and we ended up building our church, of course, but we paid the taxes until we raised the money as well, so.
I just thank y'all for being kind to us last year. I'm just gonna try, I'm here on behalf of our board trying to save us some funds.
Thank you, Travis. We
right.
appreciate you.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
See you, Travis.
Rushmore Lions Club was one of them that was late, and he walked in late. We just wanted to say thank you.
Good morning, sir. Your name?
My name is Greg Cadle, and I'm the president of Rushmore Lions Club. And I just took over last September, and our former president, he had taken another job, and so he wasn't coming back to kind of direct me as to what needed to be done. And so I came today just to kind of give you that statement, and that moving forward, I would make sure that the next presidents change every year. And the next president will be informed that, we need to get this done by November 1st.
Thank you, sir.
And, so I just want to thank the board for approving us.
Thank you.
Have a good day, sir.
Thanks for being a lion. Roar.
Okay, so that's all the exempts. You'll take one of them up again next week. Next week, we've got a day and a half scheduled, and we are still the half day on the one.
I'm not sure on the 22nd. We have, Monday on the 20th is from
8:30 to 12. Yep.
Okay,
and then the 22nd, I'm still iffy on the afternoon. I'm trying to keep it in just for the morning, but
okay.
I'm not sure yet.
And what we have done is we have scheduled the appointments at specific times. In the past, not knowing how long somebody's going to talk or even if somebody's going to show, we have scheduled an hour at a time. You appeal your property assessment and you are told it will be heard anytime between 9 and 10 o'clock. And you don't know when. So everybody shows up at 9 o'clock. We have actually told people this year 8:15, 8:30, 8:45, and they've got a specific time. If you can keep it going at 15-minute intervals, nobody will back up. And we have done an exceptional job of trying to make sure that people that say they're going to appeal are going to actually show up. We can't promise they do, and that'll eliminate some of the gaps where we sit here and don't do anything. But that's what we've got. Every 15 minutes, somebody's going to be here.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Roskinek.
Shannon, what about the gentleman that contacted me yesterday? They're gonna appeal, but they don't want to be here in person.
Okay, so Joan has made arrangements for some people to call in, and I don't know how that's gonna work. They've got a time, and she's gonna make it happen.
Okay.
And
I
I
was
don't
just
think
curious.
there's very many of those.
No, I just wondered how it was gonna be handled, that's all.
Yeah, I think phone call. We always have a few tax reps that work out of state that have absolutely no intention of coming to South Dakota, even when there is no virus. So we deal with a phone-in appeal with those. Now a couple of property owners are wanting to do it.
Some of those appraisers sometimes come up there and talk about dark places and dark spaces.
When you do it on the phone, when you do it on the phone, though, it gets a little,
It-
sometimes you get echoes and you don't always hear them right, so that it makes
It's,
it a
it's
little more
not
tougher.
good, yeah. Okay, so what we tell people is when the law requires written notice of an appeal, and once they give us something in writing, we bring it to the board, and the board will act on it, whether they're here or not. Some people say, should I be here? And I'll tell them, well, you're probably more convincing in person than not. Some people choose not to be here anyways. What we have done with the 15-minute intervals is just try to eliminate people stacking up, eliminate the audience. So. And we will do the same thing we've always done with boards. We've met with property owners, and there's a lot of properties we have found something that we didn't know about the property, and we will make a recommendation to you to change the assessment. And those people aren't going to come in. The people that are going to come in, they're either not happy with our recommendation or we didn't have a recommendation. We think the value is good. There is nothing we have found that makes the assessment wrong. If we think the value is wrong, we tell you that, and those people don't have to show. But if we think it's right, they can still come in and appeal.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do they need to make an motion to approve your denied list? They didn't. They just went to the.
That's right. You acted on the one, but not on all of the
It's
others.
your fault.
I'll make a motion to approve the denied list.
Motion
Second.
by Roskinek, second by DeSanto. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion
catch.
carries. Thank you, Kara. Motion to recess
Good catch.
That's why.
So
Move
moved.
to recess.
by Drew, second by DeSanto. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.